Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Valerie Bagley. I am the Chief Program Officer here at the Change Companies, and thank you so much for joining us for today's 30-minute webinar. For those who may not know, who may not have been introduced to the Change Companies, we provide evidence-based solutions for behavior change using a medium called interactive journaling. For the last 30 years, we've been supporting our clients in delivering the best behavior change programming to the people that they serve. And those include folks in addiction treatment, correctional settings, youth intervention, and beyond. Today, we're so excited to have two of my colleagues on to talk about creating healthy, thriving correctional cultures that are going to support evidence-based programming. These two panelists have extensive experience running risk-need responsive programming in the justice system, and they have some great recommendations to share with us. This webinar is going to be 30 minutes in length. We'll have 15 minutes at the end to answer some of the questions that you all submitted. And feel free as we go through this webinar to submit those questions into the questions box in your sidebar as well. We'd love to hear from you and get your thoughts. So I'm pleased to introduce your presenters today. First off, we have Caitlin. She's our clinical director here at the Change Company. She has over 7 years of experience working with correctional populations and facilitating programs in correctional institutions. Her program research and evaluation explores program impacts and efficacy. Caitlin will be receiving her PhD in criminology and criminal justice from Arizona State University this December. Yay, congratulations, Caitlin. And then let me introduce our second presenter, Karen. Karen Hellman is a senior training consultant for us here at the Change Companies. She's the retired division director of inmate programs in reentry for Arizona Department of Corrections. She has over 20 years of experience working with justice-involved populations and overseeing addiction treatment and reentry programs in correctional settings. So without further ado, Caitlin and Karen, I'd like to welcome you, and let's hear what you have to say.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Valerie. Welcome, everyone. Caitlin and I are very excited to present to you today, and we appreciate your taking the time to join us. So we're going to start with the idea of, if we're talking about creating a program culture, what is a program culture? What does this look like operationally? How do you know you have a program culture? So one of the first things that you're going to look for is a sign of a functioning program culture, and that is that staff and inmates are supportive. What does that mean? It means that they know what programs are available. If you have visitors to your unit, your institution, and they're walking and talking, and they encounter staff can talk about the programs. They don't have to be an expert and know every detail, but they can say, yes, we have addiction treatment on this yard, or yes, we're running a cognitive restructuring program, or we have these volunteers who come in and do this reentry program. They know what's available and what's going on, and that they know the purpose of these programs, that they can say, yes, that we do cognitive restructuring because our clients are folks who need to examine their way of thinking, and the whole purpose of that program is that they start to make better decisions. They, again, don't have to be an in-the-weeds expert, but they can talk on a high level about why the program is being delivered and why it's important for the men and women at your institutions. Another thing that you're going to look for, and this is huge, is that programs are considered a priority. And this means at the unit level, at the shift level, at the unit level, at the conflicts level, and at your entire agency level. And one of the signs of this is that programs are only canceled as a last resort. With all of the things that happen in a jail or prison system, it becomes very easy to quickly say, oh, we've had this issue, so we just need to cancel programs right now, or oh, we're short-staffed, we need to cancel programs, or oh, we have COVID, so we're not going to do any programming, for a year. An institution that's doing that is demonstrating that obviously they don't have a program culture, and they're not invested in it. I've seen units where they've had major riots and 2 days later, they have the majority of their programming back up and running. And frankly, I've seen units where they have a fight between two people and they cancel programs for 3 days because we need to get everything under control. That's not a sign, again, that's not a sign of program culture. The first is the one they've got it up and running. It's important. It's important enough that we're going to figure out how, when it's safe to do so, because it does need to be safe, but as soon as it's safe to do so, we want programs to continue to run. The added benefit for that is that having the programs running and having, again, the men and women attending and diverting their energies into this, you're making the yard safer. And then decisions are made with programs in mind. And again, this can be at a micro level and at a macro level. Inmate movement, depending on what agency you work for, you may have a lot of inmate movement, you may not have much inmate movement, but these decisions are made in mind with what's going on at that unit. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you want to take a unit that is currently designated as a minimum or low custody yard. And because there are beds needed for a higher custody, that they're going to do some retrofitting and maybe change populations around. Okay, that's a need that a system has. And the reality is you're not going to get around that. But when that need is being addressed and when those decisions are being made, that programs personnel is in the decision making and can put their 2 cents in. Again, it might have to be overridden, but they can talk about, hey, we have a lot of programs on that yard. How are we going to handle that? Because a lot of cases you can't accommodate for that. You can say, you know what, if we delay the move, if we can delay that move by 2 months, we can complete, 200 more people with their GED or whatever the case may be. But a sign that you have a functioning program culture is that program has a voice in the room when those decisions are being made, and that they're not just notified 2 weeks, oh, your entire population is changing, figure it out. Signs of program culture are sort of like, they're bigger than, it's not like pornography where you know what you see. You actually feel it. You walk on the yard, you can feel the excitement, you can feel the buzz, you can feel staff's investment, you can feel the inmates' investment. It just, a yard that is functioning and taking all of these factors into consideration just has a little bit of a buzz going on, and you feel it when you walk in. So there are 3 phases to building a program's culture, and all 3 are important, and you need to devote time to all 3, because if you don't devote time to all 3 phases, you're going to inadvertently get an impression that this is not important. So you can have preparation, implementation, and post-implementation. And right now, Caitlin's going to talk to you about the preparation phase.
All right. Hi, everyone. Sorry about that little technical issue where the slides keep changing on me. Thank you, Karen, for setting us up for that. I'm excited to work us through what preparation for a program looks like. So when you're thinking about building a program culture, we encourage you to think about it like laying the foundation of a home. This preparation shouldn't be rushed. It should really be given a lot of time and energy because it's ultimately going to be the foundation of success for your actual program. The first step in preparation is assessing the need. You want to make sure that whatever you're delivering, whatever new initiative you're starting, actually meets the needs of your population, of your unit, and of the overall kind of needs of the department or the agency that you're working within. So there's no use in starting a program that doesn't really address need. Of course, consider the usual demographics like age of the population, education level, sex and gender, but it's also important to consider, how much time does this person have to release? What is their priority right now? Are they getting close? Is reentry a priority? Kind of think about all of the things that those people have going on. And then, of course, their criminogenic needs, right? You can look at crime type and assess maybe this person seems to have a particular issue with substance abuse versus a person with an anger management issue. It's really important to narrow in on the needs of your client. That way you're utilizing your resources appropriately, not wasting anybody's time, and really making sure everyone's getting what they need. Second, it's critical to assess the resources you have available. This is a really hot topic right now. Of course, with your staff shortages, does your staff have time? Do they have the space? It is so important that you be realistic with the resources that you have available. Does your staff have time? How many people can you serve at one time? One of the things that we really think is important is keeping class sizes small and manageable. You never want a class to grow too large that you're really not able to meet the needs, that people are kind of getting lost in the shuffle, not having an opportunity to engage with their peers or with their facilitator. You also want to think about, do you have the necessary materials? Who's going to order materials? Who's going to do printing if that's necessary? Who's going to pay if you're ordering materials? If you're in a really large system, are you ordering at the unit level or at the state level and distributing? These are all of those really kind of concrete foundational things you have to be aware of before you just run and launch a program. Finally, really in line with assessing the needs, you actually have to select a program or curricula that, one, meets the needs, and two, is in line with the resources you have available. So this is when you go out and you start to explore different program opportunities, whether they be ones you have in-house or ones you're going to purchase externally from an organization like the Change Companies. But this time you want to really make sure that you pick the right thing. So this is a point that requires a lot of attention. One of the challenges that you might face in this early preparation stage is that only program staff are responsible for programs. And similar to what Karen was saying earlier about you should have program staff involved in all decisions that are not program related, you should also have all of your staff in on the programming decisions that are being made. So we highly encourage, our pro tip is make it a system-wide initiative. A lot of people will just get stuck in this mentality that they only care about programs. This job sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. They aren't giving me attention in my security role. It's really important that from the outset you involve everybody at every job classification. So have them consider how their role might impact programs, even if they aren't the facilitator of the program. What does that look like? Your job in security, how is it going to benefit your job? Karen and I love to share one of those pro tips is create a slogan, create something that your staff can remember, can buy into. So our favorite example, obviously, because we come from Arizona, is Arizona DOC's 25 and 10. So that initiative was reducing recidivism by 25% in 10 years. And it really got everyone involved. It was a quick and easy thing to remember. It was an exciting slogan. It would be a really, really great goal to achieve. And so getting everyone accountable to that metric and make it giving them bigger meaning to their work was a really special way to do it. And so really creating a slogan and creating a goal is a really positive way to engage staff, and it doesn't require any extra work or any extra money. So it's an easy way of making it a system-wide initiative without actually adding any work to your load. Karen, I'm going to toss it back to you for our implementation phase.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. Okay, so you've done your preparation, and now you're going to go into your actually implementing the program. So this also has 3 phases to it. And the first is the kickoff. I cannot emphasize enough how you want to make this a big deal. This is something to celebrate. This is something to people invested. Like Caitlin was just talking about, getting staff across your agency invested. You want people from accounting involved in this. You want people from food services. Make it as wide an effort as you can. Don't forget the inmates. They're part of this kickoff as well. So make an official launch date. What this does is it can build excitement, can build momentum, gets things off on the right foot. And also, quite frankly, from the back end, we're going to talk about data later, it gives you an official date. And when you start measuring, if you start measuring things, lots of ways to do this, lots of ways to generate excitement for the kickoff. You can do email blasts, you can do posters. Something I've seen done before, which worked really well, is, again, don't forget the end user, the men and women who are going to be taking the programs. Have them have a poster contest. Make it system-wide. Choose the best top 3 posters, print some posters about it, post it around the institutions, post it around your central office, have it all over the place. That gets buy-in, that gets people looking at it, they see it, they can, if you have the slogan, they can learn it, they can utilize it. Another great way to generate excitement and get the kickoff going is to take your top leadership folks and have them do little video blasts that they can send out. Nothing is going to help you more than if you can get your leadership invested and have them demonstrate to other staff that they are invested. And these video vignettes can be, filmed in a matter of 15 minutes. You don't have to take a lot of their time, but just in there say, hey, this is happening. I'm excited about it. We're supportive of it. We're counting on you, frontline staff, and you're rolling it. You're the ones that are going to make this happen. Again, it gets people up and rolling and excited by it. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to actually train the staff in the program. This takes time, and you're going to want to have a rollout plan for how you're going to do this. If you're a very small institution or unit doing this, maybe you can do it all at once, but usually you're going to have to do waves of this. What you're going to want to do, you can train staff in the actual curriculum. You want them whenever possible to do actual demonstrations of any exercises, one that gets them over their fear so they're not, it's if you're just up and lecturing at them and they don't have an opportunity in that training to practice it a bit. You'll have some people who will take it like a duck to water. Some people are fearful, and letting them practice it gets them over that fear. You want to have a variety of people. Don't just have the frontline staff people going. If you can get your deputy wardens, some of your deputy wardens, your wardens to attend, have them attend. Then that way they know what's going on, and it doesn't become this, well, there's this black door and we're not really sure what happens behind it. And are they all just standing behind there holding hands and in kumbaya? They actually get to know what's going on. So it takes the fear and actually builds that support that we talked about earlier. You want to overtrain the amount of staff you need. And I mean overtrain staff in the program. I mean, if you think you're going to need 20 facilitators, train 30 facilitators, because you and I know that there's a lot of movement of staff. Sometimes it's movement for great reasons. People get promotions and that's exciting and everyone holds someone back. Sometimes people move to a different unit, to a different facility. And then we all in this business, we all lose a lot of staff that resign and move on to other jobs. So you want to train more than you think you'll need. Otherwise, you're going to, from the get-go, constantly playing catch up. And even in your rollout phase, you're going to be scrambling for instructors, so overtrain. And then what you want to do is you want to pilot it. This is particularly important if you have a very large system. Pick a location or two locations and try it out. Get the wheels moving. See, what's going to fall off and be like, oh, we thought that was really good, but man, that doesn't work. Or, oh, hey, this really works and we want to expand it in it more. I mean, it allows you time to work up those kinks, and it also allows excitement to build, because what you'll find is if you have the program culture building and people are excited by this, you're going to you'll roll it out a unit or two, and you're going to have people actually knocking on your door saying, hey, I want some of this at my unit. I went there and I felt the energy and I saw the inmates were excited to attend and I saw the staff were invested. I want this at my unit. So when you're part of the program, make sure you have a rollout schedule built so that you can tell the other folks, hey, it's coming, but pilot it. Trying to roll out something system-wide at one time, you're setting yourself up for failure, because you are going to have problems and you're going to constantly be plugging holes. Take the time to pilot. So with that, of course, there's always going to be challenges. One major challenge is programming becomes just one more task to complete. It's a reality in our field that our staff are stretched thin. They have so many things to do. So a pro tip for combating the idea that programming just becomes one more thing I need to check off my list is to train in the why in addition into the how. We just talked about earlier about training. It's one thing to give people the skills to deliver the program. It's another thing to teach them and discuss with them why they're doing this. It's human nature that we're more inclined to do something and stick to it if we know what the end goal is and if we have an investment. So it's not a big secret. Tell them why they're doing it because, you know, first of all, most inmates are released. These people are going to be your neighbors. Do you want your neighbor to be pro-social person, or do you want your neighbor to be continuing in the crimes? And, okay, well, why are we doing the program this way? Well, we're doing it this way because the research demonstrated that by doing role plays, 89% of people had better retention. Let them know that that's not state secrets. You can let them know all that information. And then also you want to give them the with them, the what's in it for me. Human beings by nature are driven by our goals and our wants and our desires. So you can even discuss, you know what, all of these skills that you're learning, you can use them in your life. If you have kids, if you have grandkids, nieces, nephews, and whatever, a lot of the tricks and tips that you are training the men and women in your classes are the same kinds of things you want to be talking to those folks in your life about. Let them, that gives it real life meaning and importance to them. Another challenge that you might come across is that you've built it and no one comes. What do you mean no one comes? They're inmates. They have to come. Well, they may come there specifically and be taking a seat. That does not mean they're really coming invested. So you don't want, the way that you can combat this, the pro tip for this is don't forget to include the end user from the very beginning. It's going to be much more successful for you if you have the men and women's buy-in who are attending the class. Okay, now does this mean that they get to decide exactly what they want to do? And oh, well, we just want a class in ceramics, and we think that no. I mean, of course, your programming is going to be determined on assessed needs and risk and criminogenic needs, but you can include them from the beginning. Let's say you're trying to decide between two different curricula. It doesn't hurt anything to throw a couple focus groups together. Let them see the curriculum, get their input. What do you think? What do you think about this compared to this? That again generates that early buzz. It gets that buy-in, and they're more likely to show up to classes, to groups, invested and willing to work. You can hold town halls at the units to kick this off. Hey, this is coming. This is what we're going to do. This is why we're doing it. This is your role in it. So don't forget to include the end user. And then another challenge that you may run across is there's always that one person. You all know what I'm talking about. You do a training, you've got that, that one person who is just sitting there. They don't want to be there. Their boss told them they had to be there. They think programming stink, that inmates got nothing coming to them, and why are we wasting your time? Pro tip for dealing with this, most important thing is don't get locked in a power struggle with them. The minute you start to do that, it's never ending. It's a never ending cycle. And your trainings just become a back and forth about why we should do this, why we shouldn't do this. It does help if you allow that person a few moments to sort of express it. Don't shut them down after the first word and say, you just need to be quiet and sit here, or I'm going to report you to your supervisor. Sometimes they're just burnt out. Sometimes they just want someone to hear them a little bit. Something I found that worked very well is say, okay, you know what, we need to move on, but I'm going to talk to you later. And then, during the break, go over and talk to the person and say, okay, so what's going on? Express to me some of your concerns about it. Odds are they're going to say, I'm too busy, I have too many things going on. I just can't take one more thing on my plate. They just want to be heard. So if you can, when you start the rollout for the actual pilot, don't put this person in a lead role. Put them in a support role. Pair them up with one of your more excited people, one of your people who is actually supportive of what's going on. This does not mean that they get to opt out completely, because again, we all know with short staff, very often you can't just opt out. But put that person in a support role. Check in with them regularly. Hey, how are things going? Encouraging them, encouraging the small steps they make. The same way that when you work, that you want them to work with the inmates, you're modeling that with them. Progress is progress. Acknowledge it. Say, hey, you know what? You did that really well, or thank you very much. You did all the prep work for the room. Whatever their role may be, constantly check back in on them. One thing to remember, and one thing that I personally have experienced, is that sometimes these folks become your best champions. The gentleman who's sitting there, arms crossed, checking his phone, not paying attention, thinking that this program is just stupid. 6 months later, is that, you know what, man, I've seen a change. I like this. This is good. I didn't think I would ever enjoy this. Sometimes they become the person that you start dragging around to all your trainings, that they can stand up there and talk about how much they've changed. So, on to the next phase with Caitlin.
Oh, there we did it again. Thank you, Karen. Really quickly, before we jump into post-implementation, we got a note from one of the attendees that we think is really helpful. They shared that one thing that they've noticed to be helpful in their experience is actually having a rollout team. So during that preparation and even that implementation phase, having a team of people who are equally excited and have some accountability and ownership over the rollout being successful is a really helpful tool if you have that staff available to you. So thank you for sharing that. Now into the post-implementation phase. This is the point of failure for most people, for most programs. A functioning program culture isn't just about getting it going, it's about maintaining. So it's about giving it that ongoing regular maintenance, checking in, is this working? Is this not working? We often launch a program with a lot of enthusiasm, and once it's going, we forget about it. It doesn't get attention anymore. Resources suddenly aren't as available or aren't as accessible, and things start to languish after a few months or even a few years. Ultimately, a good program should go on way longer than your tenure at the department, way past anyone's time in prison. When things get ignored, they really fall apart. So this is really important to almost view your programs like a relationship that you value in your life. When you stop tending to it, you know that's when the downhill starts. So our first kind of step in post-implementation is conducting regular follow-ups. Really important that you do this on an informal and a formal level. So you don't always have to have large sit downs where you pull all your staff. It can be really casual walk and talks with an officer who's just walking down the yard, or even with the inmate population or any of the clients that you serve. It's really important that you check in and ask, how are things going? You can always do follow-ups in the classroom, so unannounced visits, but we really encourage no gotcha moments. So never walking into a classroom and trying to catch a facilitator kind of not doing their job well or going off track or anything like that. It's really important that you're just getting a read on how things are going, sharing feedback, and having those conversations. Utilize fidelity tool measurements. So one thing that the change companies has that we really, really value is our fidelity tool. It's actually making sure, are you doing this well? Are you facilitating to fidelity based on the training you were given? Are your clients making progress? These tools to have a very accurate and tangible read on how things are going are really helpful to maintain and continue to improve. We also highly recommend, when you catch a small issue, get it before it becomes a big issue. If you notice one facilitator is maybe not doing things according to fidelity, or a group's just not running really well, get a hold of that before that permeates the whole culture. Finally, in that kind of regular follow-up section, we really encourage being flexible and adaptable. We know that corrections and the justice system as a whole is ever changing. Things are popping up all of the time. So what worked in the last cycle of programming may not work anymore. Your population might have shifted, your facilitators might have changed. Things may have happened in the system that require you to kind of, be on your toes and be ready to make changes that work best for your population and for your staff. The next piece of post-implementation is collecting hard data. We highly encourage gathering statistics from the outset. So you can really see from day one through a whole program, how is this impacting your population? How is it impacting the overall unit, the overall system, individual inmates or individual clients that you serve? It's really important to collect this hard data, and even more important to share it with your staff. This is going to help keep people motivated. It's going to help you when you're starting to see positive trends. It's going to get those people who are, like Karen, we're talking about, uninterested, think it's a waste of time. You're going to start to get their attention, and then it's going to keep your excited staff motivated and engaged. So being able to show them a success story in a place where they typically only see failures is so important. It's really easy in the justice system, and particularly in corrections, to overlook success stories because we never get to see them. We just see failures when they return back to incarceration, and that can be really discouraging. And finally, we really encourage this hard data because it helps you get funding. It can help you get grants and other funding sources. It can help make a case for why you need to order more resources next cycle. It just really gives you that feedback on how things are working and makes the case for why you should keep doing it. Next, we also recommend anecdotal data. So really the opposite of that hard data, you want some of those more persuasive evidence kind of stories. A person, you want the story of a man or a woman who came into class, was so shut down, thought it was a waste of time, says, I'm only here for the certificate, or I'm only here because I don't want to get in trouble. And those people, like Karen was talking about, similar to staff, end up being the ones that do that 180. And suddenly they're engaged. They can tell you what they've learned. They're the ones encouraging other people to join those programs. So those powerful stories, although they may not be hard data, are just as important for all the reasons we shared above. It also gives voice and faces and names to these people going through your programs. It's really easy to just look at it like a number, like, okay, we graduated 60 people this quarter. Okay, 4 people dropped out. No, I want to know who they are, why they dropped out, or why they succeeded. I want those people to now become champions of the program. So it's a really good way of motivating. It's a good way of motivating other clients in the environment. When they see their peers really into something, they're going to be like, okay, maybe I want some of that. Maybe it's not so bad. I see one of my best friends, the guy I work out with, or the woman that I go to church with, is really into this. Maybe there's something to it. So that anecdotal, those personal stories are just as powerful as the hard data. And finally, celebrate the milestones. So the same way that you really took the launch seriously, got everyone excited, do that throughout the program. When you finish that first cycle of the programming, have some kind of mini celebration. Share those numbers, share the stories, like really make sure everyone stays motivated and gets to see how well things are going. This is really when it's easy to get lost in the day-to-day routine. You just are doing it, right? It becomes so second nature that you forget why you're doing it, what impact it has. So this is a really easy opportunity to just rejuvenate motivation in your staff and in the population that you're serving. One challenge that we want to acknowledge is that some areas, whether that be at the, your shifts or your units or different complexes, are highly invested. You have those people who are super excited, and then others just aren't. And that makes it difficult, because if you're seeing really good adoption in some areas and really poor adoption in other areas, it's hard to know what's working, what's not, why this is happening. Our pro tip for this challenge is create some healthy competition. So you can actually use that hard data and those anecdotal stories we were talking about in the last slide and say, okay, let's look at numbers. This unit or this shift or this complex has a 97% completion rate. Who wants to beat them? Who wants to get to 98%? And we encourage that healthy competition, right? We don't want anyone doing anything negative or, oh, who can be better than the unit that has a 12% rate? No, of course, keep it positive, keep it exciting, but really highlight people that are doing things well, encourage others to kind of meet them, surpass them, and really get them working hard to all eventually reach that best in class, highest fidelity program that you want to see them doing. So we love a good, healthy competition, hand out awards, acknowledge them at your quarterly or your annual awards, really emphasize success. This really helps to kind of shut down those more uninterested, less than excited people. So model what you want your staff to do, stay excited, stay motivated, and it's going to be hard. That environment and that energy is contagious. So it's going to be really hard for them to not want to be excited and to not see the good that you're doing in your unit or your system. So with that, before we shift to question and answers, we just want you to know that you can build a program supportive culture. We acknowledge the struggles that you face in the system that you work in. Like Karen mentioned, all of those issues, there's considerable burnout. There's a lot of exposure to negative stimuli. We know what environment you're working in, but you still can do this. So don't forget, it does require ongoing attention and commitment, but if you have a group of committed people, you can make this happen. So now we will turn it over for some questions and answers. And Karen and I are going to start. Actually, I'm going to turn it over to Valerie. Excuse me.
You need to know what those questions are so you can answer them. Caitlin,
Yes.
Karen, thank you so much for those incredible insights, those really actionable tips for rolling out a healthy and thriving program culture. Yes, we're going to jump into some questions now. Thank you all for the questions that you submitted and shared. Again, we've spent a little bit of time going over these skills. If you need to jump off now, we understand. Let's take a little time to cover some of the questions that you've all submitted. The first question that came up a lot was related to the truth that we all acknowledge, that folks are really short-staffed right now. A lot of the institutions that we work with are understaffed. The folks who are still there are feeling burned out. Some of them are feeling stretched really thin. So what advice do you have for rolling out this type of program culture, getting buy-in and motivation when that's the reality?
I'll take that one. That is a reality. I don't think I know a system that is overstaffed and has an abundance of resources. So one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to lean on staff who is still excited, who is still motivated. That doesn't mean giving them more work, but it means putting them front and center, getting them, just to begin the new programs or the new efforts. But something that we don't often consider is for giving something to a staff member, let's look at what we can take off their plate. What do we have them doing currently that's really non-value added that we're just doing because we've done it for the past 10 years? And oh, yes, they have to generate this weekly report, but no one ever actually really looks at the report. So look to see what you can take off their plate that's non-value added. That gets immediate buy-in of, you know what? We respect the fact that you are working hard. We respect the fact that you are trying to do 10 hours worth of work in 8 hours. We can help. We're giving you this, but we're taking this off your plate. And you also want to sometimes, frankly, as an agency, just do we talked about earlier about evaluating. Evaluate what can you really do. It's the needs are so great that sometimes as an agency, as a system, you just need to, I can say, what can we realistically do and do well, and scale back and say, you know what, this is something that we're really excited about or we think is important, but we're going to put this off until we address this need and get this running well. So a lot of times it's really from the very beginning being realistic in that assessment of what can you do.
Thank you. Okay, the next one was related to large scale versus small scale implementation, right? These probably look a little bit different. What different advice do you have, whether someone is, just rolling this out on a very small scale, maybe on an individual unit or with a single program versus a system-wide implementation?
Great. I will take this one. Thank you, Valerie. One thing, if you really go back to thinking about how we discussed pilots earlier, small scale implementation is always easier to start with. Even if you have the full intention of doing this across your entire system or institution, it gives you the time to give things more attention, to really plan things out on that smaller, more micro scale, give attention to that pilot, give it the resources it needs, really time to learn what works and what doesn't. So if you're never gonna expand it from there and you're really just sticking to that small scale, that's totally fine. You already have that benefit. But even if you're going to do a large scale rollout, we do recommend starting with that smaller scale to begin with. Even if you're just doing it for that small scale for 1 or 2 units or one complex, we highly recommend that you still share with the agency once you have a good system going. This is where everyone's going to want to be a part of what you're doing. So the easy way to transition from small to large scale is just to share the success stories, talk about it, tell them what you have figured out. You know, if you have this system that's working pretty flawlessly, people are just going to want to copy and paste into their own environment. The same tips and tricks remain. We still recommend, even if you're doing this with a very small unit, right? Population of less than 1,000, a couple facilitators, highly recommend still following that procedure of preparing, implementing, and post-implementation. Staying on top of that is still going to create the most successful version of your program. And one thing you can do, even on the small scale, you can still create healthy competition. So rather than across units or across complexes, you can actually create it within your unit or within your group, between facilitators, between shifts. Really, on the smaller scale, you can still implement and practice all of the tips that we shared earlier. So the biggest benefit is just starting small in order to scale up in a successful way, rather than trying to figure it out at that very macro level.
Great tips. Okay, last one. This one's related to community partners. So we have some individuals on this webinar who may be working for state agencies or volunteer networks or religious organizations. So how can those community partners support these types of initiatives?
Caitlin, you want to double team on this, or what do you want to do?
Sure, let's do it. Karen, you go ahead and start.
Okay. First of all, I would say for community partners, anyone who's on the line, from my heart to you, thank you very much. You're a valuable member of the entire criminal justice system. One of the first things I would say, from my perspective, would be for community partners to find out what the corrections department needs. You know, what gaps do they have that they may be able to help fill? And that just sometimes reaching out to the department saying, hey, you know, what do you need for us to do? And then for the corrections department or the jail system or whoever you are in the justice system to be willing and open to partner, and to start leaning in on some of these community agencies to help fill in those gaps. The justice system has this tendency to want to just be, we can do it all. We can't do it all. And sometimes it's reaching out to community partners to use their expertise. And I'll let Caitlin speak a little bit to that, because I know we've had some discussions about that.
Definitely. So I think, like Karen said, acknowledging what you as a justice system are capable of and what you have the capacity for, and then for the community partners to know what gaps they might be able to fill is super important. A couple of examples that I'm sure you all have already seen in your organizations is outsourcing things like religious services, right? Like local church organizations or other volunteers who come in and support from that angle. We really think it's important to not try and retrofit your staff to fit a role that already exists elsewhere. So for example, again, coming from Arizona, we have tons of state agencies that fill all kinds of roles that corrections doesn't. One of them being the Department of Economic Security. I'm sure that your state or county has a local equivalent. It's really focused on, you know, on finances and employment. That organization has created employment centers within our corrections institutions. They are the job placement experts. So rather than asking our corrections staff to become job placement experts and in addition to the 12 other things they're doing, also help find your population jobs, they partnered with that state agency who is already an expert and already does that well, and now they work together to fill that role. So it's just super important to know what you're capable of and say, this is our max, this is the resources, this is what we can do, and then inviting other state agencies in to support you in that way. And as well, just community organizations, nonprofits, other volunteers, invite everyone in. There is never too many hands helping in this environment.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's wrap up here. One quick note, we'll be sending a link to this webinar and a PDF handout summarizing the points that Karen and Caitlin have covered today. That's going to be arriving in your inbox 2 days from now, so stay tuned for that. Caitlin and Karen, thank you again for this incredible presentation. These two are part of our team of masterful trainers here at the Change Companies. Trainings include a range of topics, effective facilitation, motivational interviewing, CBT, and yes, program implementation planning. So if this is something that's important to you and your organization, please do give us a call. The number and website are here. Additionally, Caitlin and Kieran have generously shared their email addresses. So if you have additional questions, we'd love to talk to you more about how to roll this out effectively in your set and setting. Thank you all again so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.